I'm Cynthia Miller, and we're jumping right in here. We're filling in the circle for the start of our Dreamcatcher painting today. We're going to be using just three different colors. This is just water that I'm putting in the circle. We've got a rawhide looking base, and I like to put a little bit of water in there. The colors will blend a little bit more. And so all my colors today do not have names. I've just used it straight from my palette. And the outside was just a little bit of yellow and green mixed together until you got sort of that lovely blonde color of rawhide. And that's the color of the outside circle. And I'm just going around and putting lines to make it look like the rawhide is wrapped around the loop, and just sort of playing with that until those parts of the rawhide circle start to look a little bit more symmetrical and exactly like it's roped around the loop. Now the little lines that show the wraparound, I've made them just stick out a little bit from the diameter of the circle, and I always use common sense when I'm trying to put different angles on things. Move your board around if you want to. This is dream catchers of before, where I've just sort of shown how I've played with the design a little bit. When you're thinking about a dream catcher, you want to remember that things are sort of falling. There's gravity there. You want it to have a little bit of life, so a little bit of air and fluffiness and weightlessness is the feeling that you sort of want to have with feathers. And so, yeah, I finished the rawhide up. You'll see at the end of the video by putting another layer on there, because I've only really got 2 layers on there. It just sort of looks a little bit underfinished, so I do finish up with more to it. And so here I'm just going to show you how I draw a bead. Well, at least the small beads inside the circle are what I wanted to illustrate here. You just want to get, a fair amount of pigment on your brush, and then just practice a little bit on plain piece of paper, getting those dots to be uniform and a uniform distance away from the next one, because you want it to look like a string with beads. And so I'm just going to go around and fill in these, they're sort of oval shapes that go to different points on the circle, and it's just the idea that they're all attached. And so I'm just putting little dots, and some of them will overlap certain areas, and some will be on the top. So here I am just sort of imagining the lines and just sort of trying to keep with that idea that they're light. We want them to be just hanging down easily, and just starting to use my blue color. This is sort of like an icicle blue color that I had a vision of to do this, all one color. So I'm using the rawhide color and the icicle blue. And so I'm just going freely at the end of the pencil lines to make the feather shapes. And I have a couple of ideas in mind, and I've sketched them out a little bit as to what I want those to look like. And they're very similar to what the artwork on the left is, and that was the template that was used with this class. I just like to do things a little bit different every class so you can see all the different variations. So this is really almost a monochrome, because the rawhide could be considered a neutral. But yeah, I really like the way it turned out. So just take your time, get the first layer of your feathers in there, just the outline, and you'll notice there's lots of white paper showing through, and you want that. You want that to show that they are light and airy. And this is how I draw the beads. So I've got 2 straight lines, and then I join them at the sides with a curved line, and then the string, or the rawhide string, flows through the center. And I do the string last after I put the beads on. So I've penciled in the lines for the strings, and then I'm doing several layers on the feathers. And as I decide where to put the different beads and the different shapes of beads, I put those in before I put the string in. Now here I'm putting a little bit of feathery touches to the tops of the feathers. As you know, many feathers have sort of really fine, fuzzy feathers at the top, and so just remembering to put those in, it just gives it a little bit more realistic look. And when you're putting the spines in of your feathers, the line that goes down the middle of the feather, that's where the darkest point is. And so you always want to be moving from the inside out and let the feathery strokes go up to the outside. So I just continue to add that darkness to the inside as I go to each one over and over again. 3 or 4, 5 layers sometimes, until I get that depth that I want. I just start light and just keep going to the dark. The darker shades, the darker tones. And so here I'm just going through the bigger leaf down below where I want to have more depth in the center. I just keep bringing the paint to the center and then fanning it out. And I'm leaving lots of white paper in the design so that it will look like there is lightness to it. And you'll notice the darker part is the lower part of the feather. We always talk about having the light at the top, whether it's a leaf or a feather. And there's a close-up of the tops of the feathers where I've put in just tiny little bits, and also the beadwork, the start of the beadwork. So those are more of a larger bead. I do a couple of small ones, a couple of round ones, and just adding now to all the different feathers. And just remember that you can move your board around to make those parts of your artwork close to where you want to paint. And I use the paper towel quite a bit too to place underneath if I have to put my hand on my artwork. I don't want to smudge it. Even though it's dry, it still feels like I'm smudging it. So I like to use that. And so in here, I'm putting small beads all the way up the feather, the line of the feather where the feather is hanging down. And I think I do half and then do the other half in a minute. So it's just, yeah, sort of creating a composition with the feathers and the beads and the lines. You want it to look balanced. You want it to look maybe not symmetrical, but balanced. So a few beads here, a few beads there, big feathers, small feathers. Just put your beads in as you go so that you know that your feathers are looking balanced with the beads. And I'm just finishing up the long string of beads there. Adding a couple more beads as I go here. 3 a little bit bigger, a couple there that are smaller, and I need something in the center there. And so if you're putting them on the string where it's sort of on a slant, you have to remember that, which I believe is what those were. And then I did a line of longer beads, I think, on the next one. So a little bit more oblong, oval shape. So I think it looks balanced with the different sizes of beads. It gives it a little bit of interest if they're different shapes. And I just wanted to do a full icicle blue picture, so I thought that's what would be a good way to do that. So I've added a few more layers to the feathers. They're starting to look like they're more realistic. And I decided to do the strings that the feathers are hanging down on as if they are rawhide. So pieces of rawhide, very thin, I guess. but they're basically the same color as the outside of the circle that it hangs from. So I wanted it to look uniform, so that's why I chose that. I could have picked blue, but I think it would have been too much blue. Whereas in my other dream catcher, I chose the color of the feather to be the color of the string. So it's entirely up to you. So just finishing up the depth of the feathers, making sure that they've got a bit of darkness in the centers, making sure that the beads are all uniform and the strings look like they're flowing. And I will be doing a bit of a background as well. We decided to do a little bit of splatter and just blend it in a little bit, not too much, because you've already got a lot of movement there, and you might want to leave it with no background color at all. It's entirely up to you how you would like to leave it. And I think you have to sort of sit back once in a while and look at your work to see what it needs. Take a break from it, and I find that when I take a picture of my work, it looks a whole lot different on the camera, so I can sort of see where it needs to be balanced a little bit better from a picture. So just turning it upside down again. And it's interesting how when we do this, we paint shapes instead of trying to paint a feather. It's more shapes because our mind is a little bit differentiating. And so here I am putting on another coat around the loop because it just didn't seem like it was sort of working together. The pieces of the rawhide that wrap around the ring sort of seems separate from the ring. So I think putting on a coat of same color really helped to sort of merge them together. So don't be afraid to put more color on, or even it's sort of like a transparent layer because you can see the lines underneath it, but it sort of blends in with the loop. If two objects that seem like they should be connected are sort of looking distant, this is a really good way to bridge that gap. And I'm really glad that I did because it just made such a difference. Now, another thing that I did that one of the students suggested was that I put the jewels, like I did with the other one, in the intersection of the small dot. So I do that, and you'll notice in the last picture after the video is over that that those jewels are in there. So I just did a small circle, left a small little white dot to make it look like it was a reflection. And so here I am putting some water for the background. And what I plan to do is load my brush and just sprinkle on the same Icicle blue. And it looks like a lot, so I start to sort of smush it around a little bit. There's lots of water on there. And I want it to be not white, not completely white, but I want something there. And so that's why I use the tissue to sort of bring up the darker spots. And it really helps to just sort of make it look a little bit more blended. So that's pretty much it. So have fun with it and follow the link to our paint classes every week.